Gang dynamics. Inside Pelican Bay State Prison. Inside Pelican Bay, loyalty can mean life, and betrayal can mean death. Behind the concrete walls and steel doors, entire prison gangs control what happens on the yard, in the cells, and even on the streets outside. From secret codes and racial hierarchies to silent wars waged in the SHU, this is the real story of how gangs run one of America's most dangerous prisons and how power never dies, even in isolation. The origins of control. Pelican Bay State Prison was designed for control, but inside its walls, another system of control was already waiting. When the prison opened in 1989, California's correctional system was already dominated by organized prison gangs that had evolved over decades of blood, loyalty, and vengeance. By the time Pelican Bay's gates locked for the first time, the Aryan Brotherhood, Mexican Mafia, Nuestra Familia, and Black Guerrilla Family had carved the California prison network into 4 invisible territories. Each group ruled its own people through an iron code of discipline. Each group enforced that code with violence. When Pelican Bay was built, it wasn't just another prison. It was the perfect battlefield. Located on the remote northern edge of California, surrounded by pine forests and constant fog, Pelican Bay was a Supermax fortress. It was meant to isolate gang leaders from their followers and cut off their communication. But the opposite happened. In the silence of isolation, the gangs only grew smarter, more organized, and more dangerous. The 4 power blocks inside Pelican Bay, power wasn't just divided by race, it was enforced by blood. The Aryan Brotherhood, AB. Known for its extreme violence and small but disciplined ranks, the AB controlled much of the white inmate population. Members were identified by their shamrock tattoos, lightning bolts, and coded numbers low. X666 or AB. Their reputation, brutal efficiency. The Mexican Mafia, La M. The oldest and most feared Latino prison gang, the Mexican Mafia operated with military precision. They ran drug distribution networks, ordered hits, and commanded respect from Southern California's Hispanic inmates. La M was less a gang, more a shadow government. Nuestra Familia, NF, their northern rivals. Born out of oppression in the 1960s, the NF represented Northern California's Hispanic inmates, also called norteños. Their war with the Mexican Mafia was one of the bloodiest feuds in American prison history. The Black Guerrilla Family, BGF. Founded on revolutionary ideology, the BGF combined political goals with organized crime. They were disciplined, secretive, and fiercely loyal. How power moved through walls. In most prisons, gangs communicate through couriers or visitors, but Pelican Bay's Security Housing Unit, SHU, was designed to stop that. Inmates were locked in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, with no direct contact, no phone calls, and no visitors without glass between them. Yet somehow, orders still flowed from cell to cell, and even to prisons hundreds of miles away. Investigators discovered how tiny paper kites, messages written in microscopic handwriting, passed through cracks, drains, or shared yard cages. Lawyers and visitors sometimes unknowingly carried coded notes disguised as legal mail. Guards themselves, bribed or manipulated, became unwitting couriers in a war they couldn't see. Even in isolation, the gangs maintained full hierarchies, shot callers, lieutenants, and soldiers. Every debt, every hit, every alliance flowed from the SHU. A code of loyalty. Inside Pelican Bay, gang loyalty was absolute. A member couldn't retire, couldn't refuse an order, couldn't betray the group, not even to save his life. The punishment for breaking the code was greenlighting, an order to kill. Once your name was greenlit, you weren't safe anywhere. Inmates would risk new life sentences just to carry it out, proving their loyalty to the cause. Former inmates describe it simply: the gang is your family, your court, your religion. You live by it, and you die by it. In Pelican Bay's SHU, some men spent decades with no human contact other than the echo of another man's voice through concrete. And yet, they stayed loyal to an organization they couldn't even see. That's the paradox of power in solitary confinement. The walls can't stop belief. The failure of isolation, the state built Pelican Bay to stop the gangs. Instead, it became their headquarters. By the late 1990s, investigators realized that the SHU, intended to suppress gang violence, was actually where most of the orders were coming from. The more isolated these leaders became, the more they were treated as mythic figures. Letters from general population inmates to SHU leaders used reverent titles, respectfully to the homie in the bay, or to the colonel behind the wall. Gangs began using multi-layered code systems, combinations of Spanish slang, numeric sequences, and Aztec symbolism to hide their communications. In one investigation, guards intercepted a coded note from an inmate in the SHU that contained an order to assassinate a rival on the yard at Folsom Prison, hundreds of miles away. The hit happened 3 days later. For the California Department of Corrections, Pelican Bay was now a paradox, a place of total silence that somehow echoed across the entire state. As the 2000s approached, investigators started to take a new approach, infiltrating these organizations from the inside. But what they found would reveal not just prison politics, but an entire parallel government that ruled behind bars, the secret governments of Pelican Bay. Inside Pelican Bay, the gangs didn't just fight for survival, they built governments. By the early 2000s, investigators discovered that the prison's most feared inmates weren't just gangsters. They were politicians, judges, and generals of a hidden world. Behind every violent act on the yard was a council decision, every alliance negotiated through messages written on fragments of paper smaller than a cigarette filter. It was a world of structure, hierarchy, and deadly order. The underground constitution. Every major gang inside Pelican Bay operated under its own written constitution, a rulebook enforced by violence and loyalty. For the Mexican Mafia, known as La M, the structure was modeled after a military regime. At the top sat a handful of carnales, full-blooded members, who issued commands known as directivas. These orders filtered down through soldados, soldiers, and torpedoes, hitmen. Below them were the sureños, general Hispanic inmates who paid respect and taxes to La M in exchange for protection. Meanwhile, the Nuestra Familia, their northern rivals, had their own government, complete with ranks, promotions, and disciplinary hearings. Their Supreme Council was made up of 5 leaders who operated even while locked in the SHU. They managed their norteños foot soldiers through coded letters, gang liaisons, and underground networks that extended to the streets. And then came the Aryan Brotherhood, AB, a small but terrifyingly efficient machine. Their structure was loose, but their creed was simple. Blood in, blood out. Once you joined, the only exit was death. AB members were responsible for some of the most organized killings inside California's prisons, often carried out with military precision. The Black Guerrilla Family, BGF, though smaller, carried ideological weight. Founded in the 1960s on a foundation of political resistance, they combined criminal enterprise with revolutionary philosophy. Inside Pelican Bay, their members often saw themselves not as gangsters, but as soldiers of resistance against the system itself. Together, these 4 forces formed a shadow government inside the walls. Every decision, who could walk the yard, who could sell drugs, who could live or die, was dictated by these hidden councils. The economy of fear, money was power, even in solitary. Despite being cut off from the outside world, Pelican Bay's gang leaders found ways to control the flow of drugs, protection money, and contraband across California. The system worked like this. Local gang members on the streets or in lower security prisons paid a tax, usually a percentage of profits from drug sales or extortion, to their affiliated leaders inside Pelican Bay. That money was laundered through coded money orders, fake legal fees, or family accounts. The funds were then used to buy influence, smuggle contraband, or reward loyal soldiers. Investigators uncovered entire financial networks run from solitary cells, hundreds of thousands of dollars moving through names that didn't even exist. Even when isolated 23 hours a day, some gang leaders could have a man killed or a shipment moved with just one coded letter sent to the outside. One retired prison investigator described it bluntly. They turned solitary confinement into a command center. Pelican Bay wasn't containing the gangs, it was powering them. Codes, ink, and language, communication was everything, and nothing in Pelican Bay was ever said directly. Each gang developed complex code systems to avoid detection. They used numeric ciphers where each number stood for a letter or name. Historic reference says, like using the names of generals, philosophers, or saints as stand-ins for leaders. Artwork and tattoos as silent signals. Every pattern, line, or color had a meaning. A small black hand tattoo could mark membership in the Black Guerrilla Family. 3 dots in a triangle could signify mi vida loca, the crazy life. A single word in a letter, written in the wrong tense, could be the signal to launch an attack. When guards tried to intercept communications, the gangs adapted again, hiding orders in legal documents, Bible verses, or children's letters. Every word mattered. Every sentence was a weapon. The unwritten rule: respect, despite decades of violence. A strange balance existed inside Pelican Bay. Each gang had an invisible border, a line of respect that, if crossed, could ignite a war. Fights, stabbings, and riots did happen, but the leadership's ultimate goal was control, not chaos. Violence was a tool, never random. The result was a tense but enduring peace among the power blocks, punctuated by assassinations when that peace broke. Inmates called it the politics. You didn't look at a rival the wrong way. You didn't talk to a guard too long. You didn't touch another man's food. These unspoken rules kept thousands of men alive in a world designed to destroy them. The evolution of survival. In recent years, the power of the gangs inside Pelican Bay has shifted. The massive hunger strikes between 2011 and 2013, led by inmates from all major groups, proved something no one expected. Even sworn enemies could unite against a common enemy: the system of indefinite solitary confinement. Old shot callers from rival gangs agreed on a truce to fight for human rights inside. For the first time in decades, the walls of Pelican Bay weren't dividing men, they were connecting them. Many of those leaders have since been transferred, paroled, or released under the Ashka vs. California settlement that ended indefinite SHU confinement. But the systems they built, the politics, codes, and power structures, still influence prisons across California today. Even outside, many of those men remain watched, monitored, and feared. Because the truth is simple: Pelican Bay didn't just create prisoners. It created leaders of entire underground empires. Pelican Bay was designed to break control. Instead, it built its own. Behind the concrete walls, men formed nations without flags, ruled by loyalty, respect, and fear. The gangs inside didn't just survive solitary confinement. They turned it into a throne room. Today, Pelican Bay stands as a reminder that power can't be buried in silence. Even in a cell built to erase your name, your voice, your code, and your cause can still echo through steel and stone.